Hey folks, we'll be starting in just a few minutes. I always like to get on a little bit early because I'm always worried that something's not going to work. Let me know how the sound is or if you're having any problems. And guys, you're going to need probably a few sheets of paper today. If you have colored something to write with or anything like that, go ahead and get that. You know me, I do like to draw out my notes. And today we're going to be talking about Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and political parties. So we have a lot to get through in the next hour. Like I said, we'll start in about 4 minutes. It's kind of nice having this earlier. It's really nice having this earlier because it's not late. Christina, good to see you. Hemina, as always, thank you for helping us out. Dylan, welcome, welcome. Hey, Camilla. Three minutes till we start. Aw, Christina, thanks. We still got 2 more minutes, so I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be the funniest thing now, but it will be. Guys, the reason we're doing this early, just as a reminder, is that there was a meeting about Bridgeland High School, so I wanted you guys to be able to go to that if you needed to. Or if your parents wanted you to go, I didn't want you to be like, no, I have to stay home. Always thinking of others and things. La la la. I got new markers out. They've been sitting up here for a while, but I never used them. Just decided that tonight was feeling kind of like a perfect time to use them. Oh. One minute. Hey, Olivia. La 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 la. All right. All right. It is 5 p.m. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Other people can watch this later if they need to. Like I was telling people earlier, you're going to want probably a few sheets of paper at least. A few sheets of paper, and then also you're going to need something to write with, obviously, because we are looking at we're doing a lot of writing today. Kind of we're going over a lot of different things, so it's going to be important that you guys have stuff to do that with. So starting out, we're going to start today talking about. I'm going to shorten my stack. I have it looks like a billion papers here. So we're going to start off today talking about Washington. Now, when we left off yesterday, we were at the ratification. Washington is put into office, he gives his takes the oath of office, gives his inaugural address, all that stuff happens. Washington is important, so we're going to start with, boom, Washington. I feel like this is like weirdly, I don't know. We're starting with Washington. Now, there's a few things to know about Washington. Washington was the first president, so a lot of the stuff that he did, what would it become known as? The stuff that he did, because he was the first to do it. He set a lot of, what did we call them? He set a lot of precedents. Very good, Camilla. Good job, Dylan. He set a lot of precedents. Now, when I say the word precedents, can you guys give me some of the precedents that he set? All right, he only served 2 terms. He served 2 terms. What else? All right, he gave a farewell address. We'll go more into that later. What else? Inaugural address, pretty much. Addressing the nation. He also came up with the idea that we're going to call him Mr. President. And also, he is going to establish a court system. He establishes the courts. And then lastly, this is probably one of the most impactful. I mean, I'm not going to say any one thing is more impactful than the other, but this is pretty impactful. He establishes the president's cabinet. What is a cabinet? Tell me some things that you guys know about what positions are there and who did he select. He selected Hamilton and Jefferson to be his what? All right. So Hamilton was he had a few. He had Secretary of State, of Treasury, of War, and then he had an Attorney General. Welcome, Enrique. We missed you. Okay, so his Secretary of State. Who was the Secretary of State? Who was his Secretary of the Treasury? Secretary of State was Jefferson. Treasury was Hamilton. Secretary of War was Knox, as in Fort Knox. And then the Attorney General was like the head lawyer for the country. No, Dylan, that wasn't him. Yeah. Okay, the Attorney General. He's like the head lawyer, and I believe this was Edmund Randolph, but you really just, that's his cabinet. His cabinet is a group of advisors. They kind of make sure that he is as well informed on the issues and as much of an expert on the issues as he can be. All right. Set a lot of precedents for future presidents. So that's part one. He also, there's a big financial issue he had to deal with. Very good, Camilla. They help Washington make decisions. What big financial issue did they have to deal with? Had to do with a war. Anybody? Debt. Hamilton's financial plan was to get the U.S. out of debt. That was its primary goal, was to figure out how we were going to pay this. Hey, Raylan. Following the American Revolution. I'm sorry, I got like really quiet there for a second. I'm so tired. Okay. They get us out. The plan was to get us out, to get the U.S. out of debt, following the American Revolution. So he has a few things. What are a few things that he wants to do with his financial plan? One of the things he wants to do is he wants to establish a national bank. Okay, I'm seeing you guys are coming in with answers now. Tax on goods, finance interest, on bonds to pay debt. Okay, so a few things he's going to want to do. He's going to want to establish protective tariffs. He's also going to want to establish a national bank. He's also going to want to establish a national bank. He did not ask to be placed on the $20 bill. He's also going to establish a national bank, which is a way to kind of accumulate all of our debt and develop interest with the rest of the world, because financially and fiscally, that's what makes sense to him. But he wants to do these protective tariffs, create a national bank, and he also wants to establish a whiskey tax. He wants to establish a tax on whiskey. This tax on whiskey is highly regarded. Why is tax on whiskey such a big deal? Does anyone remember? Jackson is on the 20. Hamilton is on the 10. Anybody? Why do we not like the whiskey tax? Whoa, folks, come on there. Are we asleep? Okay, well, anyways, we're just going to move on then. The whiskey tax is basically a tax on whiskey, and it's for farmers. And it's all about, it was basically farmers would use any extra corn they had to, any extra corn that they had, but they would turn it into whiskey, and then they would trade the whiskey for finer items. Very good, Christina. It's not fair to the South because the South is the only people who have the South are the only group of people who have this. The South are the only people who have farms big enough to have extra corn, so they're the only ones who are affected by this whiskey tax. Now, another thing that happens, I like that someone mentioned this. Christina just said they didn't like the National Bank because they had already paid off most of their debt. This was because we had already consolidated the national debt so that everyone was now paying equal part, but the South had already paid their share. Oh, oh my gosh, it looks like a pod person just wrote that. So this word right here is paid. The South had already paid their stuff. Okay, hi student. I don't know who you are, but hi. So all of this is happening. All good things. Um, so we have Hamilton's financial plan. We have the next day we're gonna have is because of this whiskey tax. There's obviously going to be a dun, 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 there's going to be something called a whiskey blank. Very good. The rebellion. This is going to lead to the whiskey rebellion. This is going to lead to the whiskey rebellion. Now, because this leads to the whiskey rebellion, before during under the Articles of Confederation, we had Shays' Rebellion, and that proved that the government wasn't strong enough. Now, what the whiskey rebellion does, it is squashed fairly quickly, and it proved that the federal government could protect its citizens. All right. Washington is going to be able to stop the whiskey rebellion. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is when he leaves office. When he leaves office, what does he do? Aside from teach them how to say goodbye, teach them how to say goodbye. All right, so the farewell address. I'm so tired right now, Dylan. I'm very tired. That's how I am right now. Okay, so the farewell address warned against two things. What two things did the farewell address warn against? All right, that's no foreign affairs. Stay out of foreign affairs. Let England be their own problem. Let's not worry about it. And then he always said, no political parties. All right. Hey, George. Okay, so this is basically Washington. He's probably going to be one of the more intensive people that we have. All right, no political parties, no foreign affairs. Stay out of permanent public affairs. To be fair, that's what it is. All right, next one. We ready? Any questions about Washington before I move on? Ooh, okay. Well, not here from you guys, so we're just gonna move on. Washington died of like complications from pneumonia, I think, something like that. All right, John Adams is up next. Right now, I want you guys to tell me everything you remember about the XYZ affair and or other things that he did. And the Alien and Sedition Acts. Sedition. Okay. So, like I said, we have the XYZ affair and the Alien and Sedition Acts. Now, basically, when we look at both of these acts, it's kind of very good. The XYZ affair is a diplomatic incident between the French and the United States diplomats that resulted in war. So, essentially, XYZ affair, the French keep attacking American ships. What shall I do? They impress our sailors. What does it mean to impress them? Okay, guys. So why did it happen? We said impressment of sailors. Anybody have anything else that you got? Okay, basically, they keep impressing our sailors. They keep capturing them on the seas, and so we say we need you to stop that. They say, here's the thing: is we don't want to. So there's that. And Adam's response is, well, that's not going to work out so well for me. And so we send over kind of the big guns. We send over John Marshall, Elbridge Gerry, Charles Cosworth Pinckney to kind of negotiate the thing. Now, after we're done negotiating the thing, they decide that they're going to do it. That what am I even saying? After we negotiate with them, we're trying to get negotiations. So the first day they won't even see us. The first day they don't even see us. In fact, they ignore us completely. We send over these diplomats, they ignore us, and we send over the. We are three smart diplomats. We want to negotiate. Please send us to France. My dream has come true. Like literally, George, for a second there. Sorry, I just saw George's been there in his bucket. Like I've been talking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I don't even think was I still talking? Like, then I had like a jolt of adrenaline that like woke me up. That was like, you're live on YouTube right now. You need to like let's get our act together. Um, the French keep attacking American ships. Impressment. What can I do? I will send 3 small diplomats to negotiate with French Foreign Minister Charles Maurice de Talleyrand Périgord. We are 3 small diplomats. We want to negotiate. Please send us to France. My dream has come true. Surely John Marshall, Charles Pickney, and Elbridge Gerry will successfully negotiate. Get to work. Consider it done, Mr. President. This is cool. Dude, we're like diplomats. Here come the ministers, representatives. Let us refer to them as X, Y, and Z. So you want us to leave your ships alone? Huh? Yes, we do. How much? I'd say pretty much. Enough to offer us a bribe. Get lost, pal. France is a powerful country. You'd rather pay. We'd rather fight expensive war than pay you some stupid bribe. We say millions for defense, not 1 cent for tribute. You'll be sorry. When Americans got word of how disrespectfully they'd been treated, many Americans wanted to go to war. George Washington was even willing to come out of retirement to join the army. I forgot the rest of it because I'm tired. But like, guys, it was quite stellar with the pens. I hope you guys liked the pens. I thought that was the good part of it. So basically, impressment of sailors. Jack Parker, please stop that. Why? Why was because impressment. Basically, negotiations go bad. We almost go to war with France over it. We send our guys over. I don't know why I'm trying to get them dresses right now. And their hips aren't connected to their body, but they're wearing clothes. Wear your suits, dudes. Everything's amazing. Everyone's gonna wear robes. They're like Hogwarts characters. Okay, so we send our guys over. Aiden, Jack, guys, I need you to stop with the silliness. Anyways, and so we send our guys over. We send X, Y, and Z. They're treated disrespectfully. They ignore us. I say us, I mean US, what? And then demand a bribe. It's pretty much messed up. I don't know what this is, but things are happening. Anyways, and so basically they ignore the US, they demand a bribe, we almost go to war. But despite what everyone wants, despite what most Americans want, we don't go to war. John Adams further negotiates and things go well, and everyone's like, man, guys, like, this is fine. And it's really funny. He's like, guys, like, look, I did this. It was great. And everyone's like, no, we wanted to go to war. And so he gets kind of like, that puts a bad taste in people's mouth. And he also does something called the Alien and Sedition Act, which was really messed up. It was basically because he didn't want the French coming into America. So he's going to make it, the Alien Act will make it harder for immigrants to become citizens. To become citizens. So we make it harder for immigrants to become citizens, so therefore they can't vote. The funny thing is that because they can't vote, the funny thing is that they were primarily Democratic Republicans. And so we skipped the whole part about political parties, but we'll get there in the next shindig. So we'll talk about that in a minute. You're welcome, remembering all the things. Um, it's harder for immigrants to become citizens. He makes it harder for immigrants to become citizens. He's going to allow them to get kicked out of the country. Not allow them, but he's going to make it to where you can get kicked out of the country for saying the wrong thing. He just like makes things very uncomfortable for French immigrants specifically, because that's kind of the immigrants that we're talking about this time. And then he also, in tandem with this, passes the Sedition Act, which says that basically said you can't speak negatively about the government. What is that a violation of? What about the First Amendment? Dudes, you can't do that. So basically, we almost go to war, but we don't, and everyone is real salty with John Adams about it. So he kind of catches slack for that. Then he patches like through this little set of things, and so he makes it harder for immigrants to become citizens, which all seems very like, it seems most shady because most of these people are going to be Democratic Republicans, and he's a Federalist, so it's like he doesn't want them in the country, he doesn't want them voting because they could skew the vote somehow. So this guy, so he does that, and then he says you can't speak out against the government, which was like also super messed up. So basically, Dylan, that is true. It really meant stop hurting my feelings because he was mad because nobody liked him. That's John Adams. Then we go to the election of 1800. The election of 1800. It's a pretty big deal. The election of 1800 is a pretty big deal because we're going to see these two political parties that have been created kind of go head to head. Now, again, like I said, I was super duper tired, like about I'm going to say about 10 minutes ago, and I forgot entirely about the things and the stuff. Really quick, an overview of political parties. There are basically two that we talk about in this history class. We say political parties. Fun fact, it's not fun like a party. It's actually quite tragic. We have political parties, and so we have two specific ones that are really get us started in the United States. We're going to have Federalists, and I always put Federalists as blue, and I couldn't really tell you why, but that is how I felt. What even am I saying, George? Federalists, and then we also have Democratic Republicans. And basically, as Washington is leaving office, he's like, as he's leaving office, he's like, guys, can we just like be friends? Because the two primary people who come out of, who are like leaders in this, the two primary leaders are, for Democratic Republicans, it's Thomas Jefferson. And then for the Federalists, it's Alexander Hamilton. The Federalists, it's Alexander Hamilton. Democratic Republicans, it's Thomas Jefferson. Do you guys remember what I told you? Do you guys remember what I told you about, like, what was their dream for America? You can pretty much sum up both of these guys by what their dream for America was. Dylan just said TJ was his nickname in office, and then he said, but then Hamilton wasn't too slick. Hamilton is getting you to say his full name, where anybody could be a TJ. I just want to say that. Fun fact. Okay, so it's basically New York City versus Little House on the Prairie. Hamilton wants more of like what Christina's saying on the feed right now. She's saying he wanted more of kind of an urban culture. Hey, Nathan. We have Democratic Republicans. Their dream really revolves around Jefferson's dream of this like agrarian society. Like everyone's just like living on the farm, and if he had it his way, people would be reading like the Declaration of Independence by firelight and like all the things. Like so, there's that. Hamilton, however, was like, nah, man, I got this. And his dream for America was pretty much what New York City became. It's like all the hustle and bustle of the big city. That is pretty much what Hamilton's dream for America was, and that's kind of what it becomes. Yes, Raylan, that is true. Oh, I like how my class knows all about the things. Raylan, if you want to look that up, the Hamilton musical, there's like a whole deal about Hamilton's personal life. Well, now we're kind of getting off track. Guys, we're getting off track in the chat. I'll let you guys talk about this a little bit later. So Alexander Hamilton versus Thomas Jefferson, they basically have very different ideas about how things should run. Some of the things that they disagree on. What are some of the prime key issues that they disagree on? What are some of the things that these two guys disagree on? Okay, they disagree on the national bank. They disagreed on how the nation should develop economically. So, economics. Specifically, the national bank. How much power the federal government should have. Strict versus a loose interpretation of the Constitution. And states' rights, I'm going to say, kind of goes hand in hand with power of the federal government. Who should have most of the power? Should it be the federal government? Should it be the states? Pretty much when we get to this, guys, political parties, Alexander Hamilton versus Thomas Jefferson. That's what I would kind of say. They disagree on economics. They disagree on politics. They disagree on how the nation should become. These are both good guys who just have some fundamental beliefs that are different. That said, in the year 1800, there's an election. 1800 is a huge election year. It was a widely disputed election, but the election of 1800 was known for being this. It's kind of like the first. It was known as like a revolution, a revolution of sorts, because it was this peaceful transition of power. It was this peaceful transition of power. Power changed hands. We went from Adams, who was a Federalist, to Jefferson, who was a Democratic Republican, and we were able to do that without bloodshedding, and that was like this really new and amazing, idea. It was a very like hugely like iconic idea that became kind of a hallmark of American democracy, was this idea of having a peaceful transition of power. That said, the election of 1800 was between Jefferson and Adams. It was super controversial because eventually it was between Jefferson, Adams, and a guy by the name of Aaron Burr. Basically, Burr split the votes. Burr, because Adams was there, people didn't. Hold on, it was between. Trying to pick out what color I should write with. I don't even know. It's between Burr, Adams, and Jefferson, and I think this other guy, but I'm not really sure. But basically, people don't want Adams to be president, but then they also don't want Jefferson. So like, weirdly, he does this thing that like, weirdly people did this thing where they're like, well, I don't want Jefferson and I don't want Adams, so like, well, I'm not going to vote for either of them. I'm going to put my votes towards Burr because nobody likes Burr. Nobody's going to vote for him. Well, it turns out when it comes down to it, Burr was always supposed to be the vice presidential candidate, but when it goes to the Electoral College, there's a tie. There's a tie in the Electoral College, and so then it goes to Congress. It goes to Congress. Congress ties, and then they tie in Congress 35 times. On the 36th try, finally, they're hitting this like issue. It's a huge issue. Things aren't working out. And finally, Hamilton, who had been kind of quiet for a long time because he'd gone through a lot of issues, the death of his eldest son Philip, and a whole lot of other things, he finally kind of wiggles his way back into politics. And when he's asked, he says he kind of puts a bug in the ear of one person who had been voting for Burr, and he gets that person to change their vote to Jefferson. Hamilton convinces this guy, and finally it's done. Hamilton turns the tables and lets Jefferson become the third president. Jefferson, in the musical Hamilton, he says, "I've never agreed with Jefferson once. We have fought on like 75 different fronts, but when all is said and all is done, Jefferson has beliefs, Burr has none." And so that's why he kind of decides, I'm going to go with Jefferson because at least he has a vision for what he wants. He won't just go with whatever. All right. So, moving on past this, we're going to go into Jefferson's presidency. Now, Jefferson, as I told you guys before, Jefferson was really great at like saying what people wanted to hear. But he was a great philosopher, but when it came down to it, he was just not that tactical. He's number 3. Jefferson is number 3. So basically, it comes down to when Jefferson becomes president, a few things happen. Specifically, we're going to talk about Marbury versus Madison. This was kind of one of the first things to happen. Okay, so pretty much, I'm not going to go into the story with you guys of Marbury versus Madison, but basically there's this court case that establishes judicial review, which means the Supreme Court can declare a law unconstitutional. If you don't know what that word means, I need you to write it down. Judicial review, the Supreme Court can declare a law unconstitutional, which essentially means that the Supreme Court now finally has its job. That was a really big problem with sorry, I'm like reading y'all's stuff, and I'm like, I'm confused. Marbury versus Madison it basically establishes judicial review. John Marshall presides. It basically gives the power to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court before this didn't really know what they were supposed to do. You guys hear all this like noise I'm making, trying to find what pen I want to write with? Thanks, John Marshall, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. All right. So that was kind of the first big thing he does. The second big thing he does is there was a big hunk of land. What big hunk of land was this that he got? Happens in 1803. Yes, Camilla, he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. All right, we get the Louisiana Purchase. Hey there, Jacob. In 1803, we get the Louisiana Purchase. We have the Louisiana Purchase. Tell me a little bit about what you guys know about the Louisiana Purchase. Tell me a little bit about the Louisiana Purchase. Anybody? Anyone? Anyone? All right, it doubled the size. Doubled the size of the U.S. Also, it cost $15 million. $15 million. It doubled the size of the U.S. We buy it from France, specifically Napoleon, because he needs money for his Napoleonic Wars. It's very cheap. It's like something like 3 cents an acre. It's crazy. Very good, Kevin. You're coming up live in this live stream, if you will. So 1803 Louisiana Purchase. 2 guys set out to explore it with a Native American guide, Lewis and Clark, and they make their way across the U.S. with Sacagawea. All the things are happening. Then one of the last things that happen is Jefferson is having to deal with this impressment of American sailors that John Adams was dealing with earlier. We have all these issues with the oppressing of American sailors, and it's still happening. It's happening. Britain's doing it. France is doing it. Everyone's impressing our sailors. So he says, I know what to do. We're going to show them. We don't even need them. He passes something called the Embargo Act. He passes the Embargo Act, and it does not go so well. The Embargo Act it's a little rough. He decides that this is going to be great. We're going to man, they don't even know how much they need us. Well, turns out that we all need each other because there's this thing called global interdependence that he was not paying attention to. And basically our economy and it's super sad. Our economy goes down pretty drastically. However, it does it's an epic fail, and he retracts it almost immediately after the economy starts plummeting and everyone's losing money. And he's like, okay, so maybe we're just gonna not trade with France and Spain. And everyone's like, maybe that's a better idea, Jefferson. Maybe you should just stop talking. And it was it's a nice idea, Nice idea. Terrible in practice. And guys, basically to embargo someone is to not trade with them. That's essentially what it means. Good there. Good there, guys. All right. Next up, we are going to Madison. Now, Madison is president number 4. War of 1812. All right, so he is number 4. But quite frankly, guys, we don't really care about oh goodness, you guys can't see anything that I'm writing, so there's that. Madison number 4, but really what we care about is the War of 1812. The War of 1812 basically happens because we haven't dealt with oppressment of American sailors. Guys, it's weird. It's like when you don't deal with a problem, it doesn't go away. Thanks, Kevin. War of 1812, we're going to talk about causes, events, and then results. Causes, it's basically just impressment, which essentially just like niente, it's no good. Impressment of American sailors, they're impressing American sailors, and it's not going well, and Britain won't stop. We've kind of come to a deal, I think, with France, but Britain won't stop. And so then we have events. Give me some events that happen, and maybe some of the results. Give me some of the events and results that you know of. Anybody? I see what's happening here. Guys, we got 12 minutes, and we still have other things to do. Help me, help me. Hey, Ore. Burn. Something burns. What burns down? Or gets set on fire? The question was, what are some of the events and results of the word that I'm looking for is War of 1812. Some of the events was the burning of D.C. Specifically, the White House burns. The original White House burns down. Dolly Madison is able to steal some stuff, so that's good. Francis Scott Key does something pretty big. What does Francis Scott Key do? That's just radio. Don't you remember? We built the city. We built the city of rock and roll. We built this city. We built this city of rock and roll. Built this city. Very good. The Star Spangled Banner is written. At the Battle of Fort McHenry. Okay. Hope you guys liked my little "We Built This City" moment because I just was in my head and I wanted to sing it. Next up, the results. Results of the war. Insert ribbon dancing. always. It's absolutely wrong, Kevin. Absolutely wrong. Him and where's my people? So results of the War of 1812. I don't know what's happening. Results of the War of 1812, we're going to have basically no like money or land exchanges hands. It's just kind of like, oh, the war's over. Hey guys, the war's over, and everyone like agrees that the war's over, and then it ends. And so the next thing that's going to happen is it's also been called the Second War of American Independence, and like, look, we won. We're still independent. Good job, us. But really, kind of one of the important impacts is the Battle of New Orleans, where Andrew Jackson becomes a hero, and that's going to kind of spur on his campaign stuff later. One of the other things that happens, is we have the Battle of New Orleans. Andrew Jackson becomes a hero, and then also, weirdly, because of like the Embargo Act and not being able to trade, and then because we couldn't trade with people during this war, weirdly we get this like surge in manufacturing. Surge in manufacturing, and because of this surge of manufacturing, it's going to lead to innovation within our country. As Dylan said, it's going to lead to innovation, and it's going to cause us to really spur forth an industrial revolution. So that's kind of cool. Economically, it actually helps us out because we become more financially independent. All right. Next up, lastly, we got 8 minutes to do a whole lot with Monroe. So, the war is over. America wins. And guys, we are feeling pretty good about ourselves. Monroe is known as like, his presidency is, as Dylan said before, it's known as the era of good feelings. And really, guys, we just won a war. There's like a surge in patriotisms. People are making money. They're coming home from war. They're like, I got money. I got things. Everything's great. And then there's like this economic surplus because we have things going like, what pen do I want to write with? I never know. All right. So because again things are going so crazy good, one of the reasons is because of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is like giving us jobs and urbanization and innovation, and things are faster, quicker, and cheaper than they ever were before. And it's like all these things, like all the things are happening, and everyone like couldn't be more stoked about it. However, all the things. Okay. This kind of gets us into more things start happening, because even though all this is happening, it's all well and good, other things are happening too. Basically, one of those things is the Missouri Compromise. And guys, basically the Missouri Compromise, Missouri, Mia, you're here. George, you're here. Look at all you guys, you're here, you're back. All my friends are here. The Missouri Compromise happens, and essentially it's like people don't want to ruin this like good vibes thing we got going, and like here we have the whole nation, which is like I don't even know what it looks like at this point. But basically, there's this decision that we have this problem because Missouri wants to come in and be a slave state, but what problems is going to arise because of this? I know, George, you just haven't said anything in a while. I feel like I just haven't seen your name pop up. Guys, Missouri Compromise, aside from the 3630 line, what did it do? What do we want to maintain? Okay, so basically we have this 3630 parallel line. Because the thing is that Missouri, which is like right above it, Missouri wants to come in as a slave state. But the problem is, if they come in as a slave state, it's going to kind of like tip the balance. We want to maintain a balance between free and slave states. And we can't do that if Missouri comes in. And so basically what we want to have happen is Missouri comes in as a slave state, Maine will come in as a free state, and then we get to maintain that balance. So it would be Missouri comes in, that's kind of what Missouri looks like. And then like Maine kind of comes in, and then we keep that balance. And that was kind of our thing. It would be a slave state versus a free state. So we say in this thing, we're like, guys, so for all this new land out west, basically the Louisiana Purchase territory, all of this new land, we're going to say that with all this new land, anything above the 3630 parallel will be free, anywhere below will be slave, and then we're good. That was the Missouri Compromise. That had to do with Missouri and Maine. Okay. So, next thing that transpires. We're going to have some court cases as well because good old John Marshall is killing it in the Supreme Court. He is asserting the power of the federal government, wielding it like a sword. So we have Gibbons v. Ogden, and then we have McCulloch v. Maryland. Okay, so both of these court cases are John Marshall court cases. Gibbons versus Ogden, McCulloch versus Maryland. Both of these court cases, this one is about a bank. This one is about trading rights on a river. But both of these rule in favor. Both of these court cases increased the power of the Supreme Court. Both of these increase the power of the Supreme Court. Couple more things as we're kind of getting into this. I'm aware that we got 1 minute left, but give me a second. One other things that happened is we acquired Florida. Disney World. We acquired Florida through the Adams-Onis Treaty. I think it's Adams-Onis Treaty, actually. We acquired Florida through the Adams-Onis Treaty basically because, you know, Andrew Jackson has been feeling kind of bored since the Battle of New Orleans, so he, like, he's told to, like, run the Seminoles out of wherever they are, and so he chases them down into Florida, and then he gets to Florida, and he just, like, takes over Spanish forts, and then he just sits there, and he's like, hey, so, guys, I'm here. Hey, Lindsay. He basically just says, guys, I'm here. I'm here in Florida, and I took over these forts, and Spain kind of decides to let him. And then he gets word to John Quincy Adams, who was the Secretary of State at the time. John Quincy Adams writes writes this Adams-Onis Treaty, which basically says the U.S. will acquire Florida. I did say Disney World. Is that weird? Yes. Okay. So, next thing that happens. I see what's happening here. Another thing that kind of gets into play is something called the American system. What was the American system? And this kind of happens as a result of the industrialization of America. We're going to kind of see the American system fall into fruition. The American system. The American system, I feel like we're struggling with this one. And it's something that a lot of kids tend to forget about. It refers to like the national roads. It refers to national roads, also canals and railroads. Basically, it was this idea that we were going to take federal funding. It was this idea that we're going to take federal funding and put it towards internal improvements. We're going to take federal money toward, they're going to call it internal improvements, which just means improving roads and transportation. All right. So the next thing that happens, and kind of the last thing we're going to talk about tonight, is the Monroe it's the Monroe Doctrine. I'm going to refer to it as the Monroe Doctrine. I'm going to refer to it as the Monroe Stoptrine because it stopped something. What did it stop? What did it stop? What did it stop? It stopped European colonization of the Western Hemisphere. It didn't stop immigration, Christina. It just stopped European colonization, which basically means Europeans could come over and join America, but Europeans couldn't come over and be like, hey, United States, I'm going to take some of your land and claim it for France. Like, that's not going to happen. They could come from Europe, but they couldn't come from Europe and, like I said, claim land for their country. That was really it, because the fear was is that there were all of these like countries in South America. All these countries in South America were becoming independent, and the fear was is that Europe is going to come over and start interfering, and it's just going to be like more battles for us to fight. What if they start encroaching on our land as well? And so we really just wanted to keep them out. It was a little bit funny because we had absolutely like no way to enforce this. Like if someone had actually been like, "No, we're going to colonize," we'd have been like, "Well, I guess you can because we can't stop you." But people listen, and that's what happens. So Monroe kind of is towards it. Monroe is basically the end of the early republic. He ends the early republic era. And fun fact of these people, all of them were from what state? Do you guys know who the first, out of the first 5 presidents, 4 of them came from the same exact state? Virginia, that's right. Monroe, Madison, Jefferson, and Washington are all from the state of Virginia. Also, fun fact, Jefferson's best friends were Madison and Monroe, and he kind of like gets them into office. After the era of Monroe, it ends the era of the early, why do they call it the early Republican? Wow, that is how tired I am. We end the era of the early Republic because the next president that's going to come in is John Quincy Adams. He is not even a Federalist because the Federalists don't exist anymore. He is a new party. I think I forget what they call themselves, but he's a new party, and he comes in and he doesn't do a whole lot, and it's a little disappointing. And then after him is the Age of Jackson. So there's that. Our next live stream, which I can't believe we're like doing so much. Next live stream will be Monday, and it will be a longer live stream, so I may do it Monday 5 to 6:30. Did you guys like the 5 o'clock? Was that okay with you? Oh, Dylan. Um, Monday, I'm gonna say it'll probably be around 5:30. Or no, sorry. Let's say Monday. Our next live stream will be Monday at 5 o'clock, and it may go to 6:30. And I'm gonna give myself an ish. So we'll have a lot to cover in the next one. Hey, I'm less sleepy this time too. Oh, it's a lot better? Nice. Okay, well, George, you can still like watch for a while. Um, Monday at 5 to 6:30ish. Our next one is going to cover. Oh, it's going to cover all the things. Well, let's see what things it's going to cover. It's going to cover age of Jackson, industrial revolution, westward. We'll cover westward expansion and that should be, I mean, that should take us a while. It'll cover that, and then Tuesday we will jump into. Tuesday will be all Civil War. Yes, Dylan, Miss Puckett. See, Camille, it's funny. You're like, I'm less sleepy this time. That's fair. Um, I'm more sleepy this time because I didn't get to have my nap. Um, what's your favorite flag? I really don't have a favorite flag. I think the Texas flag is quite iconic, so I do appreciate it. But I don't spend a lot of time looking at flags, but I'm glad that Dylan likes fun with flags. Anyways, so Monday, 5 to 6:30 ish. We're gonna do Age of Jackson and Industrial Revolution, Westward Expansion, and then following that live stream on Tuesday, we'll have our final live stream. So, aww. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And you're finding out all the things about Bridgeland. I'm jealous because I kind of want to know things about this new school you guys are going to. Um, yep, Dylan, that's kind of weird. Yeah, it is. Anyways, hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you later. Don't forget, you guys, pages 17 through 30 of your event book due tomorrow. All right. Laters.